that with so-called organized crime, the mafia, La Cosa Nostra. Have you any knowledge at all of that?
No, sir.
None of any kind. Have you ever been associated in any way with any illegal activity?
No, sir.
Now you're mentioned...
Senator, could you re-ask that question? I don't think he understood it.
Yes, sir.
What were those illegal activities?
Huh? I gambled.
There's a lot of moving parts in this story. The Chicago and New York mob, 2 kidnappings in 1933, the framing of Irish gangster Roger Toohey, Teamster President Jimmy Hoffa, the Stardust Resort Casino, and President John Kennedy. This story will focus on Jake Factor and his wife, Rella Cohen Factor. John Jake the Barber Factor was a Prohibition-era gangster and con artist affiliated with Al Capone's Chicago outfit. Born Ikov Faktovitz on October 8, 1892 in Hull, England, he grew up in Lodz, Poland from the age of 1 until age 11. The family then immigrated to St. Louis, Missouri. Jake's more famous older half-brother was cosmetics mogul Max Factor. Jake had trained at an early age in hair care and later worked at Chicago's Morrison Hotel barbershop, earning money to help his parents. This led to his mob nickname, Jake the Barber. Here's some trivia. Jake's third wife, Rella Cohen Factor, was the older sister of Millie or Mildred Cohen Factor, who was married to Jake's half-brother, Max Factor. Rella and Millie's brother was Isidore William Red Cohen, a prize fighter and convicted murderer in 1922. Red worked as Jake's bodyguard when he was in the United States. In 1926, Jake Factor got into a partnership with the New York criminal genius Arnold Rothstein, the same mobster who rigged the 1919 World Series. He had bankrolled Jake with $50,000. Jake also got a sizable investment from Chicago's Al Capone. Jake perpetuated a stock scam in 1926 England that netted $8 million, a substantial sum for the period. Some of his victims were English royalty. He fled to France with his wife Rella and executed another major scam, rigging the tables at the Monte Carlo casino and breaking its bank. After their Monte Carlo caper, they returned to Chicago to hide out with help from the Capone outfit. While back in the United States, Jake was tried and sentenced in absentia in England to 24 years in prison. He fought extradition all the way to the Supreme Court, but fearing he would lose, had himself kidnapped on July 1st, 1933, with the help of Capone mob boss Frank Nitti. And when he was found, he accused another mobster, Roger Toohey, of abducting him. Toohey, an Irish gangster in Chicago, whose rogue members had kidnapped Jake's son Jerome 3 months earlier, had a beer delivery franchise in rural Cook County. He'd bought that from Johnny Torrio. Al Capone was a protege of Johnny Torrio. The story of how Jake and Capone bosses Murray Humphreys, Paul Ricca, and Tony Accardo frame Roger Toohey is an entirely different tale, and an interesting one at that. It was made into a movie in 1944 titled Roger Toohey, Gangster. Preston Foster played Toohey. Strangely, there is no mention of Jake, Rella, or Jerome in the movie's credits. I might speculate that John Roselli, a Capone member who was sent to take control of the Hollywood unions and studios, was told to send the studio a warning about mentioning the Factors in that movie's credits. Just speculating. Toohey was incarcerated for 25 years, 9 months. He was released from Stateville Prison on October 24, 1959. Just 22 days after his release, Toohey was gunned down in front of his sister's home. That was December 16, 1959. On that July 1st, 1933 evening, Jake was with his wife Rella and son Jerome and friends after an evening at the Dells Casino and Nightclub in Morton Grove, Illinois. Their cars were pulled over by armed gangsters and Jake was taken away. The others were released unharmed. One might ask what's so special about this documentary. On that July night, the other friends with Jake and Rella and Jerome were my dad, Charles Redlick. He and Jerome were friends from Northwestern University. And my grandparents, Al Epstein, also known as Eppie, and my grandma Mildred. Eppie was an entertainment attorney who worked for MCA, Music Corporation of America, in Chicago and in Beverly Hills. Jerome Factor and my dad were driving in Jake's Duesenberg. They were 19 years old. Eppie and Jake were in a limousine behind them, and Rella and my grandma Mildred were in the third chauffeur-driven automobile. Here's a rare 16mm film clip of Jake Factor at my grandparents' home in Palm Springs in 1936. Jake is with an unidentified woman, possibly a sister. Jake was the youngest of 10 children. Here's a shot of Rella Factor at the same 1936 gathering. Rella wasn't as shy as Jake in front of the camera. On February 2, 1943, Jake Factor was convicted in federal court in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for mail fraud and sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined $10,000. Released from prison on February 9, 1949, Jake was freed on parole after only serving 6 years of the 10-year sentence. From 1955 to 1962, Jake Factor took over the Las Vegas resort hotel and casino, the Stardust. He had 82%, the majority of the hotel stock. However, the stock was in his wife Rella's name. The real owners were the Chicago outfit bosses such as Paul Ricca, Tony Big Tuna Arcado, Murray Humphreys, Sam Momo Giancana, and Mo Dalitz from the Cleveland mob. Jake and Rella sold the hotel portion of the Stardust for $7 million in 1962 or 1963. There's an entire story about the Factors and their involvement with the Stardust in the FBI's file on Jake Factor. The movie Casino is based in part on the Stardust. In late 1962, after an investigation spearheaded by United States Attorney General Robert Kennedy, Factor was scheduled to be deported to the United Kingdom, but received a presidential pardon on December 3, 1962. Factor became politically and philanthropically active, donating to John F. Kennedy's political campaign, and in 1962, Factor gave John Kennedy $25,000 to help fund the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Jake was also involved in an attempt to bail out Teamsters President Jimmy Hoffa from his real estate-related financial problems using Teamster pension funds with Sun Valley Inc., a Florida real estate developer firm. Jake Factor spent the remaining 20 years of his life as a benefactor to Southern California's black ghettos. He wanted to make amends for all of the suffering he had caused in his life. He spent millions of dollars building churches, gyms, parks, and low-cost housing in the poverty-stricken ghettos. Jake Factor died January 22, 1984, at age 91, and is buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, California. 3 United States senators, the mayor of Los Angeles, and several hundred poor people who benefited from Jake's generosity waited in the rain to pay their last respects. Rella Factor died January 19, 1969, at the age of 64. Jake and Rella are together at Hollywood Forever Cemetery.